receive a link to the recording sometime tomorrow morning from Go-To Training. I encourage you, go back, revisit the webinar, increase the playback speed to 1.5. Specifically, if this is what you do on a daily basis, whether you help procure PBM services or you buy PBM services yourself. So just a little bit about me, and and let me get my marker out here. I'm this handsome fella right here. Just a little bit about me. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry, and listen, this is the part of webinars I really don't like. More times than not, I would prefer for the presenter to skip that part about their background, but it's different in this case because there's so much bad information. There's so much self-dealing in the industry. I want you to trust what I am going to share with you because I got nothing to hide. I've been in this industry for 2 decades, first as a pharmaceutical sales rep with Eli Lilly. After doing that for about 3 years, I was fortunate enough, they saw something in me enough to promote me, where I led a market access team for a short while, negotiating with pharmacy benefit managers to get our branded products onto the PBM's formulary. My specialty at that time was diabetes care. And so if you're familiar with the insulin manufacturers, you know Eli Lilly is either number 1 or number 2 in that list. Not just insulin, but just diabetes in general, with your anti-diabetic oral medications. The Actos at that time was a big one. And so I eventually, I always had the entrepreneurial bug, wanted to do my own thing. Loving the pharmaceutical industry, I decided to start a mail order pharmacy. I ran that business for almost 5 years, sold our claims basically is what we did at the end of 2009, going into 2010. And I was frustrated, to be quite honest with you, I went into the industry thinking, you know, from a revenue perspective, we were going to do, from a profit perspective, we were going to do well. You know, generic drugs were inexpensive, and becoming a bigger share of the claims history of employers at that time. Little did I know, or was I aware of, the poor reimbursements coming back from pharmacy benefit managers. I still remember it like it was yesterday. My first contract, I won't name the name, but it's a big 3. And our first contract, before we got involved with the PSAO, you'll learn about that here in a bit. I think for brand drugs, the reimbursement was AWP minus 22. And you just can't make a living like that. And on the other side of the fence, negotiating with drug wholesalers and being tied into these master agreements with the drug wholesalers that give you really nice pricing up front, but then, you know, as a contract progresses, change the contracts, and pricing gets tougher. And so at that point, I decided, you know what, if you can't beat them, join them, but we were going to do it different. And this isn't a sales pitch about, you know, my company or anything at all. This is about you. But we decided we were going to do it different, and we were going to share what we learned with anyone who wanted to listen. I don't have to tell you about what's going on in the news today. There's enough of it out there already. But what I will tell you is I'm sitting on pins and needles waiting on the results of the FTC's inquiry into pharmacy benefit manager heavy-handed tactics. And by heavy-handed, I mean opacity. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What does that opacity look like? How do you uncover it? What does it mean to you and your client? So by the end of this presentation, I want you to know how PBMs make money. I want you to feel something other than indifference. If you are indifferent and you don't have fire in your belly, or you are just concerned about yourself, then this webinar is probably just a waste of time for you. And when you learn that, I want you to take some action. And the action I want you to be able to take, and let me back up. Price is a concern, no question about it, for self-funded employers, which is my primary concern. Price is a concern, but how you get to lowest net cost isn't about, and I'm not saying it isn't important, but the most important piece of getting to lowest net cost to make sure that employers aren't overpaying is eliminating information asymmetry. And so while we talk about pharmacy benefit managers, not disclosing, rebates and not disclosing the contracts that they have with pharmacies and pharmacy networks, they're able to do that. And it is intentional through this economic theory, which says that if one party has access to information that another party does not have access to, or that party with the information has more knowledge and skills to interpret the information that they do have, which is the case in this instance, that party with the most information and the skills to interpret it is going to use it to its financial advantage. PBMs aren't leveraging information asymmetry to help their clients. They're using it to increase and protect their profits. And so information asymmetry makes it difficult to ascertain, hear me out now, this new phrase for 2023. It makes it difficult to ascertain the PBM's take rate. It gives me chills when I say that. We're going to talk about the take rate a little bit more here in a bit, but just sit on that for a second. When I talk about information asymmetry, this is a prime example of what I'm alluding to. This is an email from, and this came after a presentation that I did with this entity. That is a health insurer themselves with 30,000 lives just under their company. Not that they insure, just under their company, 30,000 lives. The director of compensation and benefits had entered into an agreement that did not permit them to get their own claims data. Information asymmetry doesn't stop at the PBM, as you see here in this email. And see, this is the beauty. When you run a PBM, you get all this nice information that you can share with folks to help them. That you can share with folks to help them. And they love to say it's proprietary. Of course it is. But it's not illegal to share it with your clients. You choose not to. It is a choice, because information asymmetry. So in layman's terms, it is easier to overcharge someone when you don't know what the amount of the overcharge comes out to. If employers know what the PBM's take rate is, they are less likely to accept it. This is an example of information success or information symmetry. PBMs pay, and by the way, the CAA in the reporting, and it doesn't jump off the page at you, but it's asking, how is the PBM reporting rebates? And one of the options is it reporting at the NDC level? You see, the government understands how the game is being played, and what they're doing. And while employers are unhappy that the government is getting involved, what they are doing is sharing their lessons learned. They're sharing their lessons learned. To help lower the cost, to hold PBMs accountable. So when we pay rebates to our clients, we provide a receipt with those rebates. And that receipt is at the claim level. And so while the information here has been redacted, plan ID, field date, RX number, and all that good stuff, when our clients receive these reports from us, that information is populated. And I'm just trying to share with you here what that report actually looks like. The significance of having this type of information is gigantic in terms of holding the PBM accountable, which is important, but equally important is determining the net cost of the drug. That's one of the primary points. That is the primary point of rebates, is to get to lowest net cost. With this type of information, you eliminate information asymmetry, and now at the claim level, employers are better capable of understanding what specific claims cost. The status quo today is this. Plan sponsors enter into an agreement with a pharmacy benefit manager that calls for artificially low administrative fees. That's the status quo. But artificially too low administrative fees, I'm saying that anything below $6 per paid claim, and then you can factor that out to a PEPM or PMPM, whatever your metric of choice is. Anything below that is artificially too low. The further away you get from that $6 per paid claim, say $1 per paid claim, sometimes there's no administrative fee. The PBM has to augment that artificially too low administrative fee through these cash flow sources here. The problem is that this cash flow source is radically transparent. It's easy to calculate how much you're paying per paid claim, per employee per month, or per member per month. What isn't so easy to calculate is what part of a reimbursement to the pharmacy that dispensed a prescription to a plan participant did the PBM keep? That isn't so easy. And so the PBMs knowingly offer these artificially too low administrative fees, knowing that they receive a blank check to generate their take rate in an undisclosed fashion. Now, just because a PBM is charging close to $6 per paid claim, and that's just a baseline, does not mean that they aren't still receiving hidden cash flows. It does not mean that. The second thing is, is sometimes this process, this status quo doesn't play out as nice as I'm sharing with you here today. Sometimes it is the PBM says forego part of or all of your pharmacy rebates, and we're going to use that and credit your medical administrative fee, your TPA administrative fee. It's the same game, different name. Here's a second source of that slide that I just shared with you. And I won't spend too much time on this other than to say, I remember this here where small molecule brand drugs dominated PBM revenues. I was negotiating with those PBMs at that time. When you got smarter, you closed that revenue source off. Remember mandatory mail order? And then everyone, members didn't like to be forced going through mail. The government stepped in, any willing provider, right? So that got closed off. Then the PBMs shifted that revenue to more complex biologics and started keeping those dollars or too much of those dollars for themselves and not passing them on. I got a really neat slide I'm gonna share with, not passing them on to their clients. And now already, if I erase this, and now already, as this is dwindling, they've already moved on to MBDCs, medical benefit drug claims. You think name, image, and likeness in college sports is the Wild West. It doesn't come close to what's happening on the medical benefit side for prescription drugs. Only the most courageous and forward-thinking brokers and consultants are taking this off the plates of PBMs that are leveraging it for their own financial gain. So listen, it may sound like I'm trying to bash PBMs. I'm not. I'm trying to shed light. What we do is valuable, despite what the naysayers may think that we don't need PBMs. Please, I've owned a pharmacy. You think we're bad? The problem isn't the business model. It's our behavior. And so I'm going to be talking about some ways PBMs drive hidden revenues. But before I do that, I need to make sure you understand the business model. I'm going to start first with the contractual relationship, and then I'm going to talk about how the money moves. Pharmacy benefit managers contract with pharmacies in order to have sites from which prescriptions can be dispensed to our plan participants. We have to have clients to provide those services too. That's one of the reasons we're hired. We've got these established pharmacy networks, and we negotiate with these networks on behalf of our clients. That's the way it should work. Those clients are self-funded employers, unions, coalitions. Depending on the size of the PBM, could be the federal government, states, cities, health systems. When a prescription is dispensed to a plan participant, we reimburse the pharmacy for that dispensed prescription, And then we bill our clients for that exact same prescription. There's three problems here from a financial standpoint. First, the inflow of cash in the form of rebates, and you will note here that this lists formulary rebates. We're going to talk about that more here in a second and its significance. The inflow of cash through the pharmacy benefit manager from the drug manufacturer back to our clients is too low. I just showed you two slides from two different reputable sources where the percent of the PBM's profit, 50% of the profit, not revenue, the profit is coming from the drug manufacturer in the form of rebates, or in other words, refunds that the PBM is siphoning off for itself. The second problem is, and let me erase this slide here, the ink on this slide. The second problem is the reimbursement for a dispensed prescription back to the PBM. Before I talk about what that problem is, let me share with you the third problem. And this is the biggest problem. And this is why CMS and CAA have been forced upon us. Look who sits at the very top of this entire system. You do. Your clients do. Yet you know the least about how it functions. That's why PBMs leverage information asymmetry. I've been at that water cooler where they talk about and make jokes about, hey, if we just pay nice rebates, we can get away with anything. That's all HR cares about, the rebates. It reminds me of, I'm a big Western fan, Clint Eastwood. On Sundays, I can watch the good, the bad, the ugly all day long on repeat. In the movie, a famous line was, "Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining." That's what's happening. I talked about the second problem being the reimbursement to the PBMs. That problem is because the reimbursement to PBMs is too high. The drug pricing standard, which forms the base for discounted prices, is known as AWP. And listen, there's a lot of talk about, oh, AWP is bad. It's that. No, it's not. AWP isn't bad. It doesn't think. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a bank account. It doesn't have employees. It's the manipulation of AWP that's bad. Again, that goes back to PBMs. Generic drugs, and I'm focusing primarily on generic drugs. Listen, I'll say it all day, every day, and I'm getting off script here a bit, but the generic drug dispensing rate is the most important clinical metric for a PBM. It is the most important clinical metric for a PBM. The higher it is, the lower plans pay. And that doesn't mean you have to forego great outcomes because you have a high generic dispense rate. And when I say high, I'm saying 90% or above. Anything below that needs work. If you think about this for a second, the average price to a plan for a generic drug is $20 ingredient costs. The average price for a brand drug to a plan, and I'm saying for a 28-day supply, the average price to a plan for a brand drug is $400. In other words, for every 1% increase in generic dispense rate, the plan realizes a 5% decrease in pharmacy cost. It's simple math. There's a lot that goes into being able to achieve a GDR above 90%, but it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. Generic drugs have two prices. The primary have two prices, the AWP and the maximum allowable cost. The MAC is more closely related to the actual acquisition cost than is the AWP, which is the list price. MAC reflects actual transactional cost. AWP doesn't. But still, the MAC is higher than the actual acquisition cost. So this is here is some examples of AWP and actual acquisition costs of some drugs. And I want to share with you. So let's take a look at levothyroxine, 100 microgram tablet, a quantity of 30. Look at the AWP. So remember, two price benchmarks that I just talked about, AWP as one, and then MAC as the other. The AWP is a list price, kind of like MSRP. So let's call it $560 as the AWP. Let's say that the consultant, the employer's consultant is able to negotiate a book-wide generic effective rate of 85%, which means no matter the price benchmark being used to determine what the plan pays, whether it's AWP, whether it's MAC, whether it's UNC or any others, effectively, overall, the discount off of AWP comes out to 85%. That means that the discount is $475, which leaves a cost of $85 to the plan. Look at what the pharmacy paid. $4. You see, I'm going back to information asymmetry. Employers know what they're being billed. The missing piece that the PBMs are leveraging is what the drugs cost. You gotta stop this. You gotta stop this. And so think about this. The PBM could reimburse the pharmacy 100% markup plus pay a $2 dispensing fee. That's $10 out of their bank account. That leaves a spread of $75. That's what the PBM would keep in this scenario. And you're probably thinking, some of you, oh, this can't happen. Okay, just watch. Later on, I'm going to get to this. Stick with me. Now, the price benchmark may not have been AWP. It could be MAC. Let's say the MAC price, the MAC, MAC apostrophe D price is $15. The out of pocket or the money that comes out of the PBM's bank account doesn't change. It's still $10. The PBM now makes a spread of $5. Spreads are intentional. They are not billing errors. The state of Ohio just about and I think they just recently settled this lawsuit. I think just toward the end of the year in 2022, I believe, sometime between the mid and end, I think they settled this lawsuit. But the point I'm making is the state of Ohio, unlimited resources. They did an audit of their PBMs and uncovered in 1 year between two PBMs, less $223 million just in spreads. In other words, these PBMs billed the state of Ohio and then paid the pharmacies. The difference between what was billed and paid to the pharmacies was $224 million that they kept for themselves. You see, the state of Ohio decided that they were no longer going to focus on discounts off of AWP. They were no longer going to, and this isn't even rebates, right? This isn't even rebates. This is just spreads. 224 million just spreads. They decided we're not going to keep asking for bigger discounts off of AWP. We're not going to keep asking for bigger minimum rebate guarantees. Instead, we want to know that, but first, before we can get to that, we need to know how much we're paying you. And so the state of Ohio, when they learned this number, of course they played it cool, and this is not hearsay. Of course they played it cool, but they deliberated for all of a day and decided that that was an unreasonable amount. And again, information asymmetry. So if Greg were here today, he would tell you, if he was poked enough, it isn't that it wasn't information they never had before. If they had asked for it, they would have received it. The problem is they never demanded it, never thought to ask for it. They had fell into the status quo. And so when they decided to eliminate information asymmetry, they terminated those contracts initially overnight and renegotiated them. The contract is the most important piece of any competitive PBM bidding process. It should be put at the front of the process, not at the end. It should be put at the front of the process, not at the end. So contract language leads the reasonable person to believe there's only one MAC list. PBM contract language leads the reasonable person to believe a lot of things. This is just one of those things. PBMs can have multiple MAC lists. Those who engage in information asymmetry, in fact, have multiple MAC lists. One of our students talked about how they went to the PBM and asked, how many MAC lists do you have? They said, we have over 40, but we're trying to cut it down. The employer's MAC list will be less comprehensive and aggressive than the pharmacy MAC list. That means there's fewer generics with MAC pricing. Employers' prices are higher than the MAC prices paid to the pharmacy. Why? Spreads. The PBM is trying to keep as much money as it can in its own bank account. I talked about in that U.S. reimbursement and distribution system workflow, that process flow, formulary rebates. The reason that that was listed is because That is the rebates many times employers are essentially left with, when in fact PBMs negotiate with drug makers for different types of rebates. And when those different types of rebates aren't accounted for in the contract language, guess what? That's where the 50% of their profit comes from. Drug manufacturers say, we're going to pay a finite amount in the form of rebates or refunds. Same thing. And then together, led by the PBMs, they ultimately decide where those dollars, which buckets those dollars are going to be placed in. Those buckets consist of rebates like this: access, administrative fee, which is different than the administrative fee, artificially too low administrative fee I talked about up front. That administrative fee is just for claims adjudication, the electronic services, pharmacy network administration, mail order pharmacy, account management, call center. That's what that fee is for. This fee is confusing, leads the reasonable person to believe this fee is the same as that artificially too low administrative fee, when in fact it's got nothing to do with it. We're going to talk more about that in a second. Market share rebate, there's others as well. Price protection, product discounts. I'm going to fly through these. I told you I was feeling it today, so I'm going to speed up because I can go it out. But I'm going to fly through these. Express Scripts sued this specialty drug manufacturer for rebates it believed Kaleo owed them for their product Evzio. It was made public. It was redacted, but there was an attorney who did a great thing. And even though it was redacted, they were able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And this is what they uncovered. This is for one drug. The formulary rebate is dwarfed by the administrative fee. If your contract or your client's contract essentially leaves you with receiving only the formulary rebate, the PBM can say, oh, we're paying back 95% of the rebate. They're probably talking about this rebate, but keeping this one for themselves. Same lawsuit, a different rebate. And you can see here, this rebate is just huge. Kaleo increased the price of the drug rapidly, and the contract between Kaleo and Express Scripts called for Kaleo to increase the agreed upon rebate based upon their price increases. Kaleo refused. I believe Kaleo was calling Express Scripts bluff and didn't believe Express Scripts would sue because Express Scripts didn't want to make this information public. Well, they called their bluff. Well, you're probably saying, well, Tyrone, that's old. That's old. Stick around. Outcomes rebates been going on since at least 2010. PBMs negotiate with drug manufacturers that says, let's agree on a metric. If the drug falls short on the metric, then you pay us a refund. This has been going on since 2010. PBMs are so brazen that in the contract language, they disguise it. Again, information asymmetry. They'll use words like clinical programs or performance-based programs. You aren't entitled to these monies that we receive from manufacturers. This is what they're talking about. This is what they're talking about. You're entitled to it, no question. So that Kaleo Express Scripts lawsuit, well, while you might think it's old, and listen, you know the old saying, I don't have to tell you. If you don't remember your history, you're doomed to repeat it. The state of Texas, now that everyone's shining a light on PBM practices, the bad practices, the state of Texas required PBMs to share rebate data, and that data was published. And PBMs will say, "Oh, well, we're only keeping 2% or 3%, or these are huge numbers for a single PBM to be keeping those dollars for themselves." Two things have to happen. Either require the PBM to pass back all of it, or if you decide to negotiate, the PBM incentivizes you. The second thing, and this is non-negotiable, is you have to know what they're keeping. And then you have to be okay with it, like the state of Ohio. One way that they're keeping 20%, right? They've gone down to 13% in 2021. They're hoping all this passes and they can increase it. But the one reason that they're able to keep that is because PBMs now have shifted to group purchasing organizations. So they knew that this was coming. And so now, to protect those revenues, they formed group purchasing organizations. And now, instead of keeping rebate dollars, what they can do now is charge GPO management fees. Those management fees come from the same bucket that manufacturers, that those finite dollars that they're willing to pay for refunds or rebates, same thing. They come from that same bucket. So this is not additional revenue that the manufacturers are paying. It's coming from the same bucket. It's just being, it's just undisclosed now. If the PBM, they're able to maintain that revenue source, that 50% of their profit, by moving to rebate aggregation, putting rebate aggregation under these GPOs, many of which are international, to maintain the status quo. So the bottom line here is, you or your clients must know the PBM's take rate. What is the whole dollar amount or percent amount that the PBM is keeping for itself? Let me share with you a case study here. The significance of the take rate, the PBM's earnings after cash disbursements. What is it paying itself? I showed you the state of Ohio as public information. In that instance, those two PBMs were paying themselves, let's call it $250 million. That's what they were paying them to be the PBM. And what PBMs have learned through information asymmetry, and while I disagree, you gotta admit it's pretty freaking ingenious. The take rate is hidden in the plan's final cost. The plan believes it's the prescription drug cost, or they believe that the PBM is taking a little bit of it, but don't understand how much. If you don't believe me, believe the ex-CEO of CVS Health before he retired in a 2018 earnings call. Go back through the Q10s and all the quarterly and annual reports of these public companies. Read the footnotes. The CEO, and this is public information. Again, I pulled this off the internet. The CEO of CVS Health said this. In layman's terms, what this means is we're going to make as much money as we possibly can. The amount of money that we're ultimately going to be able to make is going to depend on the level of sophistication of our clients. That is exactly what that means. Everything in green is revenue into the PBM's bank account at some point. An example of a cash disbursement would be a reimbursement to a pharmacy in the PBM's network. Another example of a cash disbursement or money out of the PBM's bank account would be a reimbursement or not a reimbursement, but a pass-through of rebates or drug manufacturer revenue that it receives and then passes on to its clients. That is also revenue out of the PBM's bank account. Whatever is left over is the earnings after cash disbursements. And from this, you can determine the PBM's take rate. The new path says this. The PBM makes money one way, from an administrative fee. You can account for it. It's easy accounting on the administrative fee. Contractually, the PBM agrees only to an administrative fee and forgoes every other revenue source. That's the exchange that happens when you pay above $2 per paid claim, and now you start to pay over $8 or $9 per paid claim. And then all the hidden cash flows go away, and so do overall cost. If fiduciary isn't an option, the second option, and should be non-negotiable for any steering committee, is I've got to know how much you're making. If you're making mail markups, if you're making retail markups, if you're keeping manufacturer revenue, I can agree to that, but I can't agree to not knowing what that amounts to for you. Your net income, if you're a private company, that's your business. I don't need to know what your payroll costs and what your real estate costs are. That's not my business as a private company. But what is my business is when I hire you, what do I pay you? Has it been 2021? It's been 3 years. Oh, freaking ready. Jeez. We brought this company on. They're still a client in 2020. When we brought them on, their per member per month cost all in was $57.88. In the first year, all in, everything, their per member per month cost was $23.12. The difference, $35 PM, is the earnings after cash disbursements for Prime Therapeutics. Not gross profit, revenue. Flowing through the PBM and its own pharmacies, mail if they have one, specialty, of course they do. Mail, specialty. Revenue flowing through their entities that cost this client $35 PM extra. And, I don't want you to ever walk away saying, I made something up. That is just what can happen when you eliminate information asymmetry. And so I'm wrapping up here. Stay with me for just a couple more minutes. So readiness to initiate change in managing pharmacy benefits. You've obviously become aware that a problem exists. That's why you're here. The next phase is then taking some sort of action about what you learned today. And here's my ask. If you want to get better at managing pharmacy benefits, if you want to break into the industry and managing pharmacy benefits, maybe you're just a person who is a curious learner and you just like to get better. Maybe your company is overpaying. You want to learn how to do something about it. Maybe you want to strengthen the relationship between you and your PBM consultant or benefits broker. Then take a look at this class, because it's the only one like it in the world. And it's the only one like it backed by a major university. And as of January 1st, 2023, that affiliation now is with University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Eshelman, and that's a horrible Chapel Hill, Eshelman School of Pharmacy, only the #1 ranked pharmacy in the country by US News and World Reports. We do these classes 3 times a year. The next one starts on Thursday. We have a summer session and a fall session. Go out online, read the testimonials about it. Dropping names here a bit, shameless self-promotion, but I'm a graduate of the Eli Broad, he pronounced it Broad, not Broad, School of Business at Michigan State. Our School of Business is named after him because he obviously graduated from Michigan State. Elon Musk at some point may equal what this man has done. And what he has done is the only person in the history of our great country to be a founder of 2 Fortune 500 companies. Not 1, but 2. KB Homes and Sun Life Financial. He did that. He believes the solutions to skyrocketing healthcare costs starts with education. Who am I to question this man? In the state of Michigan, cars are a big deal, except I know nothing about them. I know ones I like and ones I don't like. That's about it. I might have trouble changing windshield wiper fluid. That's how bad I am with cars. So when I need to have an automobile repaired, I know going in, there's a good chance I'm going to be taken for a ride if that car repair shop isn't radically transparent and good people. When I'm unsure about that, I walk in with my chest stuck out, raise my voice, and bang my hand on the table. I don't believe I need the service you recommended. I believe I need this. That fake bravado is what gets me in trouble, because I'm not knowledgeable enough to either agree or disagree. So my emotions get involved. And ultimately, I end up buying services I don't need and declining the ones that I do. Don't be like me when it comes to pharmacy benefits. Either learn it or partner with someone who's an expert, not these so-called experts, but someone who really, truly understands it and can fight for you and your client. All right, that is my time today. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. Take a look at the course, go out online, type in CPBS, you'll find it. I'll stick around just in case a few questions come through. Thank you.